اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وينفعنا ما علمتنا يا رب العالمين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. The reason that we chose this topic, which is the Shaytan and the Jinn, is because a lot of people have questions about it. A lot of people fear the unknown because they see that it's something, you hear a lot of stories. And one of the reasons that this is a topic we prepared before Ramadan is because the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that when the first night of Ramadan comes, Allah Azza wa Jal, He closes all the gates of Jahannam such that no gate amongst them is left open. And He opens all the gates of paradise such that none of the gates are remain closed. And every single night in Ramadan, Allah Azza wa Jal gives people freedom from hellfire. He writes them that they're people saved completely from hellfire. And also on the first night of Ramadan, He said that the Shaytaan are shackled. That the Shaytaan are shackled. And we know, because Allah Azza wa Jal gave some of us good eyesight that we could see the moon from 3 months away, mashallah, that we know Ramadan is next Friday, right? So Taraweeh will be Friday next week. And when you come to think about it, that is when all of the Shaytaan will be shackled. All of them, and what does it even mean? So Dr. Salah Hassawi, he answered this. He's probably one of the most referred to scholars in our time. May Allah Azza wa Jal increase him in knowledge. And this whole concept of the Shaytaan are shackled, people have questions. So then how do bad things still happen? How are people still inclined and have this inclination towards bad? So they said either it means that the Shaytaan are restricted in terms of how they can influence you. That they can't influence you as much because you're in high spirits. You're thinking about Allah so much. Ramadan, the amount of barakah that comes in Ramadan, Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't allow them to influence you as much. He said on the other hand, because Allah used this word that shows it's like restrained not necessarily by meaning, but an actual restraint, like by being shackled with chains and whatever, he said then it means that it's the general Shaytaan. But the Shaytaan that we are created with, right? Because everybody is born, when everyone is born, they're born with a qareen from the Shaytan, from the Jinn, and they're also born with a qareen from the Malaika, from an angel. And all throughout your life, throughout your day, the angel is trying to give you advice to do good things, right? Pray on time. Stop listening to that thing. Obey your parents. Behave. Don't look at that thing that Allah Azza wa Jal knows that you're looking at. Don't say that word that Allah Azza wa Jal would be displeased with. And then the qareen from the Jinn is doing the quite opposite. Yani, it's sunnah. You have time. You don't need to. It's fard. Do the fard and then that's it. You wake up for Salat al-Fajr, you hit the alarm to slow it down. Yani you have from now till 6:40, whatever. Yani instead of the majority of us knowing the time that Salat al-Fajr starts, the majority of us know when Shuruq comes in. Right? We all memorized that sunrise is at, for example, whatever it is, 6:45. We know that we just got to get those 2 rak'at in before 6:45. Alhamdulillah, I'll go back to sleep. But that's not the way of the Sunnah. That's not the way the Prophet ﷺ told us. You should be coming up early and praying your salah on time. But the Shaytan, he plays games with us. You see, the less we know about this sworn enemy to us, the more that they're going to fuel on us. Because we've always said this, that everything Allah created runs on something. They have a fuel. Right? They have a fuel. We get tired. We want food. We want drinks, etc. The Shaytaan, they run on ignorance. They run on ignorance. When you don't know, they can take easily advantage of you. When you don't know that it's so much better to pray certain prayers in the masjid. When you don't know that when the Prophet ﷺ said one of the signs of hypocrisy is every time he makes an oath, he breaks it. You would think twice and 3 times and 4 times about what you say to your children, about what you promise them. Yeah, we're going to go, inshallah, inshallah. Use inshallah like it's nothing. So we should say the Arabi inshallah or the Muslim inshallah? Which one? Because the Muslim, inshallah, means you're going to do everything in your power to fulfill that oath. When you speak, you are a person of your word. You fulfill it as best you possibly can. Little things like this we don't even realize. But the shaitan, because of our ignorance, him and his durriya, the Rasulullah Azza wa Jal mentioned that they are a sworn enemy to mankind. This creation, this jinn creation, the more that we know about them, the less you'll fear them. Because we hear stories. You watch a movie like The Exorcist, freaks you out for life. Freaked me out. Be honest with you, I hate that movie. You hear other stories, people that experience some sort of possession. We'll cover that. But believing in the jinn, that they exist, even though you can't see them, and they can see us, as Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in the Quran, that is required in our religion. If somebody says a statement, this jinn creation doesn't exist, that is a statement of kufr. That is a statement of disbelief. But if somebody says, I don't know about this possession, ilmas, can somebody really be possessed by a jinn? I don't believe in it. This is bid'ah, it is not kufr. That's an innovation in the religion. So just so we're very clear, because a lot of people, they hear these stories, they read online, a lot is online. You see a lot of people getting famous like that, they just make stuff up, they never really took proper study, and so they come, they read a few things, and they just repost it. And that's weird, because that's not how the sunnah is preserved, and that's not how Allah Azza wa Jal taught us to teach this religion to the next generations to come. This word jinn comes from something concealed or unseen. And that's the reason that anything with that kind of root letters, it gets the same thing. Like Jannah. Jannah is paradise. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no eye has ever seen it, no ear has ever heard in it. This is paradise. We don't see it, right? Jineen, which is the fetus. Nobody sees the actual part. See the telescope, whatever, but that's why you can't see it. Majnoon, somebody who's nuts. Because they can't see his sanity. He must be gone. He's lost it. So anything with these root letters, they come with something concealed. Something concealed. So there's different types of this creation. The first thing I'll tell you is some of them are actually Muslim. Some of them are actually Muslim. There's Muslim jinn. And they make dua for you. And sometimes they even try to help you. Here's the key thing. You are never, cap locks, underscore, bold, whichever way you do it today, on TikTok, I don't care, YouTube, Instagram, you never are allowed to seek the help from the jinn. Ever. Even you say, oh Allah, the Muslim ones. No, zero, you're not. It's an act of shirk. If they help you in a way that you don't even know, that's different. That's different. You didn't seek anything. You didn't seek anything. So the different types of jinn that are not good of their type, of their creation, there's a few. Some of them are called an amir, which is those who are actually living amongst people. Living amongst people. There's another type called arwah, which they are the ones who take the possession of young children. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us and all of our dhurriya and our children as well. Then there is shaytan, shayateen. Those are just generally ones that are causing harm and mischief and causing enmity between people. There is marid, which is those people who are causing worse harm. Worse, like they're trying to really cause pain to people. And then the worst is called an ifrit. Ifrit. And so that's why you hear some Arab, they say, this child's like an ifrit, which is the worst of the worst kind of jinn. You shouldn't use these kind of terms either. By the way, you shouldn't call your kids a shaitan. You shouldn't call your wife a shaitan or your husband a shaitan, anything like that. But some people, they do have negative inclinations. You could say, wallahi, maybe your qareen is strong. Sta'id min ash-shaytan. And that could be possible, right? But you could you can get close to Allah so much so that this qareen doesn't have influence over you. Doesn't have influence over you. To the extent that the Prophet ﷺ said that his qareen aslam. Aslam. What does that mean? Aslam. That the jinn that was created with the Prophet ﷺ when he was born, that his became Muslim. Some scholars said he aslam, he submitted in the sense that he gave up trying to get the Prophet to do anything bad. He just gave up. But it seems what the stronger opinion is that his qareen actually became Muslim. His qareen actually became Muslim, which is also the opinion of one of my teachers, Sheikh Walid Basyuni. The creation of the jinn, we know that they're created from marijin min nar, right? That they were created from a smokeless fire. If any of you ever cook at home and you look at the stove, and you look at the flame of the stove, towards the end of it is this red part. But towards the beginning part, it looks like a blue and kind of clear, yeah? No guys are shaking their heads. We're all Uber Eats now, huh? DoorDash. What are you talking about, the oven? Nobody's going to have one anymore. You got to cook sometimes. So you go, all right, so you don't cook. Go click the oven on. Go look at it. So that's what it's good for now. We know what this process was. But does that mean that that's what the jinn look like? The answer is no. Because you and me, we were created from earth, from clay. Go stand next to the dirt. You don't look anything like it. Right? But you were created from that. But Allah changed that creation. That's what your origin was from. Okay, the nature of their creation is that the Prophet ﷺ said that the jinn are of three types. One type which flies through the air. One type which is like the snakes and dogs. We'll mention this a little bit further. Snakes and dogs. And one which is able to shift from place to place. Speed, yani they can move from place to place very, very quickly. And you remember that, right? Who can give me the evidence where a jinn was shifting from place to place? Who knows? Who said that? Yes, in Sulaiman, with the story of Sulaiman. And yet, why is this important, this story? Because the scholar said, look at when Sulaiman challenged the jinn, because Sulaiman alayhi salam, one of his miracles is he had control over the jinn. Yes? You know that, right? He had command over them. So he wanted to prove to the Queen of Sheba, the Queen of Sheba, a miracle. So he said, who can go and get me her throne the fastest? So this guy says, right, before you even get up from your throne, I'll get it for you. This ifrit from the jinn. That's the toughest of them, by the way. Bad of the bad. That's the dude right there. And yet, rajulun, a man, human being, was able to get the throne of the Queen of Sheba before he can blink his eye. So he outpaced the jinn. You know, a lot of scholars, by the way, on a side note, have said, if you look at this ilm that Allah gave to the human beings, that they could possibly figure out a way to travel the earth in that kind of speed. And if you look at some of the scientific history, just on a side note, that equation, E equals mc squared, if you remember that, for those who are in sciences and whatnot, that was Einstein's equation trying to understand mass and matter. Just on a side note, but I don't want to get too much into that. But nonetheless, what I'm trying to show you is that still Allah is showing you that they don't have any real power. Don't be afraid of them. Allah, with the ilm that Allah gave you, you will far outpower them and outpace them. Ibn Taymiyyah and many other scholars have mentioned that even some of those jinn that can fly, they have done sihr, to allow those who worship them to also fly and do crazy things. And some of my teachers, some of my scholars who live in Morocco, in Al-Maghrib, they actually showed us pictures of some of these, like a sahir, these people who practice sorcery. I would like to call them sorcery, not necessarily magician, because a magician is somebody who's like playing tricks on your eyes. You know, that's just some joke, some tricks. He's not claiming he has some supernatural powers like a sorcerer would. And what they would do is they would actually have a contract with a jinn. It's weird. I couldn't believe this, by the way. First time I saw this. They would actually have contracts with jinn. These are the type of people that are cursed. These people are cursed. This is 100% haram, and it's absolutely forbidden in our religion. But the kids' tricks, card tricks and all of that, wallahu alam, every one of my teachers said they're fine, because they're not intending to show you that he has any supernatural powers. But some scholars said that, wallahi, I believe it was Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, he said, even if I saw a man walking upon water, I wouldn't believe anything he said if he wasn't following the Quran and Sunnah. Imam al-Layth went further. He said, even if he was flying, even if this man flew. And these things can happen. Alhamdulillah, we don't see them here. But if you ask some people overseas, they've seen and heard some of these weird things. Nonetheless, what about this thing, snakes or dogs? Snakes or dogs. So, the Prophet ﷺ, he said 3 types of snakes, the jinn can never take their form. 3 types of snakes, the jinn can never take their form. Who knows them? You know what I usually do with some of the other halaqat that I have? I usually have a bag of Kit Kats, because I like Kit Kats. So whoever gets these little questions here and there, I give them Kit Kats. I just hope you're not allergic to nuts, and now everybody has chocolate they're allergic to. I had to wind up killing somebody on my favorite chocolate. But virtual Kit Kat. Who knows the 3 types of snakes that the jinn can never take their shape? I'll give you a clue. One of them's pretty easy. Any of you watch Aladdin, the cartoon? Remember? The Arab are always messing around with which snake? No? Cobra. Jazakallah khair. Good job. Cobra, right? Cobra's one of them. What's the second? Which one? Is Musa snake in Arabic or is it English? I'm sorry. Musa, is that your pet? You call him Musa, pet snake Musa, I don't know. So, well, is it a rattlesnake? Is that what you meant? A rattlesnake is the second one. Look at the sisters Googling this quick. You're not getting a real Kit Kat, I don't have them. It's not worth Googling it. And then the third, which one? Stan? Is it the snake? It's the snake that doesn't have any skin on its head. The Rasul said. He described it, he didn't name it. So it's a snake that doesn't have skin on its head. Weird, I don't know what that looks like. But for sure the rattlesnake and the cobra snake. What about dogs? I'm going to say a hadith to you. The Prophet ﷺ told us, and I want to see how you're going to give us tafsir of this hadith. The Rasul ﷺ said, when any one of you are praying, and a black dog walks in front of you in your salah, you broke your salah. You lost your salah. Repeat it. He said, because the black dog is a shaitan. Okay, here we go. The moms, I knew it. Tom's dog is always barking. It's a shaitan, and I always knew it. They're always afraid of the black dog. Run across the street, run the other way. Who can give us the understanding? What? Rasul didn't differentiate between pit bull and canine. No, no. He said a black dog. Some scholars said this was only the black dogs of Medina. Some scholars said. Okay. Some scholars said Shaytan, they're like a shaitan because he's haqid. They're have like an evil towards them. Some scholars said, generally speaking, if a jinn was to take the form of a dog, it would be a black dog. Got it? Not all black dogs. But generally speaking, if they were to take the shape of a dog, it would be a black dog. So it's not all dogs. Right? So every Arabi Muslim guy overseas had a dog named Rex. They all named them Rex, I found. I don't know why. But wallahi Rex, ala zaman Rex, when they used to, ira' ghanam and stuff like that. And by the way, I would love to do that. We tried to look for land and buy sheep, but that didn't work out. Anyhow, can human beings see jinn in their original form? And the answer is no. No. There are some scholars who reported seeing jinn in a human form. And all of their reports come very similar. That they look short in stature, that they're vertically challenged, and they're very, very hairy and unkept. That's how they describe them, but Allah made it very clear that they can see you, but you cannot see them. You cannot see them. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had a meeting with the jinn. Hadith ibn Mas'ud. So people who want to sit there and deny, first of all, there's a whole chapter in the Quran, Surah Al-Jinn. Next, also Ibn Mas'ud, and there's the hadith are mutawatir, meaning what? They're so great in number and authenticity that it's impossible to deny it. So Ibn Mas'ud, radiallahu anhu, he said, I was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he drew a line in the ground. He said, stand here, don't go past this line. And then he said, and he went. And I don't see where he went. He said he had a meeting with the jinn to teach them their religion, to teach them the religion of Islam. So generally speaking, all the rules of Islam apply to them. So all of the jinn that were Muslim at the time of Adam followed the Sharia of Adam. All of the jinn that were Muslim at the time of Ibrahim, for example, wallahu alam, followed that Sharia. This is how we understood it. And the same thing with Musa alayhi salam. So when he came back, he said, he recited to them Surah Al-Rahman, Surah Al-Rahman. And the verse that he recited to them, when it came to the verse 13, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, verse 13, they said, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. The jinn said, Oh Allah, there is no signs that which you've bestowed upon us that we disobey. We hear and we submit. Those were the Muslim jinn. Those were the Muslim jinn. The jinn are like us in the sense that they are created with free will. The ability to obey and the ability to disobey. Right? So this concept of sami'na wa ata'na, you know, a lot of times we go through life, and even when we have good Muslim parents that are teaching us the religion, sometimes the culture gets in there as well. And then you might be sitting in a lecture like this, and you heard and you learned something different. You might look at yourself like, well, I'm comfortable. I have good Muslim parents. We live in a good Muslim life. Alhamdulillah. But you learned something new. You learned something new. That the Prophet ﷺ never did ABC. The Prophet ﷺ always did EFG. You learned that the Prophet did certain things. You learned that the Prophet ﷺ commanded us to stay away from certain things. And that's where sami'na wa ata'na comes in. It doesn't matter what cultural background you came from. If the religion, if Allah Azza wa Jal, the Prophet ﷺ commanded or showed us to do something a certain way, that's sami'na wa ata'na. And that's what separates the good Muslimin, the good mu'mineen, for those people who are trying to elevate in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal on the Day of Judgment. Everything you came across in your life, you found that you were doing something wrong, you made dua to Allah that He allows you to be guided to that correct path. That He helps you with the struggle, the sin that you have. Because the Sahaba, it would be narrated about them that when they would come back from harb, when they would come back from war, actual war, jihad, right? Not this crazy word that you see online that some of these radicals have hijacked. That's disgusting, right? When your non-Muslim friends ask you, oh, you believe in jihad? You say yes, but not that crap you see on TV. Not that garbage. You know, there was a time that the Roman Empire would write to the Muslims, hey, bring your jihadists and save us from these sick people. They would ask, please bring them. They'd write to who? The leaders, the kings of the North Africa, because North Africa was Muslim. And they had a very strong, good Muslim stronghold at one point. And they would write to them, save us. Save us from the tyranny of these kings. Save us from this. Come, bring your Islam, bring your jihad. Huh? But now today, they take it for all sorts of perverted definitions and use it for their own marketing. May Allah Azza wa Jal forgive us all, and may Allah Azza wa Jal guide us. But nonetheless, when those Sahaba would come back from war, they would say, خرجنا الجهاد الكبير الصغير وذهبنا إلى الجهاد الكبير. That we left the jihad, the big jihad, the small jihad, which is the one on the battlefield, and we're now heading towards the real big jihad, which is the battle of life. It's a lot harder. It's a lot more of a struggle to live for the sake of Allah than to die for the sake of Allah. Never forget that. That's why, by the way, you will find all throughout the history, from the time of Adam, the first human being, the first prophet, Mukallam, spoke to Allah, all the way till the end of time, that a Muslim, in their nature, they want to live a long life. They want to live a long life. Adam alayhi salam, when the angel of death approached him, he was asked, he said, it's time, I'm requesting permission to take your soul. How old was he? 960. He said, no. It's not my time. I still have 40 more years. Allah said, I have 1,000. And he said, yeah, but don't you recall that when Allah showed you all of your progeny, and He wiped all the backs from the souls from the back of Adam, his progeny, and He showed them to Adam, and one of them stood out. It was Dawood alayhi salam. And he said, oh Allah, who's this? He said, it's Dawood, it's your son Dawood. He said, why does he have 60 on his head? He said, on his soul. He said, because I ordained it. He said, oh Allah, give him 40 of mine to complete the 100. Allah Azza wa Jal said, it was written. Yani what? The scholar said it was written. It was already written. Allah Azza wa Jal said that He was going to give him 100. Allah already knew that. So when he came to Adam, and he said, the angel of death said, didn't you give 40? فَنَسِيَ Adam. Adam forgot. And Allah Azza wa Jal allowed him to complete the 1,000. And when Allah said it was written, and He was going to tell Adam he's still living to 1,000. But why would Adam want to live 40 more years? Khalas, Adam spoke to Allah. You know what Adam saw? He wants to live more because he knows how much more ajr he could get. Idris alayhi salam, it said upon him, not from the Sunnah, but from Ahl al-Kitab, that he used to get the amount of ajr, the amount of rewards of all of the Muslims of earth on that time, of his time, half the ajr of all the Muslims on earth. Every day, Idris would get half of the ajr of all of the Muslims of earth on his time. That's how much they would be working in the path of Allah. Ihna, us, you want to know the criteria for Islam? Go look at when people are getting married. You know what they ask you? Does he salli? Sometimes. Oh, okay, alhamdulillah, at least it's not nothing. That's our criteria. Our criteria for Islam is down to the salah. That's it. Not does he go to the masjid. Not what is his income from. Is it haram or is it halal? Not how does he treat his parents. Not how is he with this, not how is he with that. Nothing. Khalas, does he pray? Is good? That's good enough. Let's go. Pack them up, send them married, on their way. Huh? So he was getting half the ajr. He calls Jibreel, Idris alayhi salam. He says, Jibreel, can we go and meet with Allah to find out how much time I have left? Because he wants to work harder. If you want to know the scarcest resource on earth, it's not money. It's not water. They tell you the next world war is going to be over water. It's not. These are fundamental things we need to live, yes. The scarcest resource on earth is time. You don't know how much you have of it. And the shayateen are making you waste it. All the time. How many messages, hey, I got 3 hours to kill. You want to kill time? Allah says, wal asr. He swears by time. He swears by time. Innal insana lafi khusr. That He said, and the majority of people lost. They lost this opportunity. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Except those people who are constantly doing a'mal. Constantly doing a'mal. All the time. You look at Zakaria and his family. Why Allah Azza wa Jal accepted their dua? Right? كَانَ يُسَارِعُونَ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ. They used to race with one another to do good deeds. They challenged. They couldn't wait. The front row, the fact that it's empty sometimes, when you enter a masjid, there's some people, they're comfortable, they're playing back there. COVID aside, if we're saying COVID to the side, it was said about the Sahaba in the front row, that if you pushed one of them with a finger, the whole row would collapse. That's how much they would try to race to get the front row. And for the sisters, the Rasul ﷺ said the best row for you is the row behind, the furthest row in the back, if there's no partition. Some scholars said if there's a partition, yani where the females can't see the males, then the front row is also best. But in a masjid set up like this, where the females pray in the back and the males pray in the front, which is how the Prophet ﷺ did it anyway, then the row all the way behind is the most beloved row and the one that is most rewarded. Things like this, that the shaitan is making a mockery out of us. He's making us lose on all of this ajr. So when Jibreel takes Idris to go up, takes him up to the fourth heaven, by the time he gets that, the angel of death sees him there. And that's where he takes his soul. In the fourth heaven, they said. Because the angel of death was waiting for him there, he said, I didn't know how I'm going to take his soul here. He just didn't know. But why does he want to know when his time is up? So he can keep getting ajr. Musa alayhi salam, when the angel of death approached him, he hit him. He hit him. The angel of death goes back to Allah, you sent me to a slave of yours who doesn't want to die. Why did Musa hit him? Why? Musa was right there. He was almost there. Where's there? Masjid al-Aqsa. That's where he was headed. Musa was so close to Jerusalem. He was so close. He was right there. Then he accepted Allah's decree and he asked that he just face Masjid al-Aqsa in his death. That's how much love they had for this, by the way. You see, we want to live a long life, but for what reason? For us, we're trying. Wallahi, I met people. Wallahi, Allah is my witness. I met people that said, I have to die. Listen to this statement. I have to die by 75. So what do you mean you have to die by 75? I cannot live past 75. He says, what do you mean you can't live past 75? Okay, this is how I got it planned out. But between the money that we make in our household, you know, the wife and the husband, I calculated that we each have to at least bring in $250,000 a year. $500,000. If we each, this is literally what they told me, if we each invest in the 401k that each of our jobs gives us, and the average return is here, and we want to retire at 65, and based on the lifestyle that we're going to live on that salary, our money's going to run out at 75. We need to die. That's a oops moment. That's a aha moment. Well, you need to die at 75. Wallahi, you got people now like this. You don't know when you're going to die. We keep thinking about money. It's all about how much more money we can make. It's about how much more stuff we can own and gather and collect. And this can't be the Muslim way. We have to be smarter than that. We have to be much, much smarter than that. So anyhow, sometimes I get off on little tangents. But nonetheless, this is what the shayateen do. They try to get you to waste time. You might have heard something like a fallen angel. You hear this? Some of the Christians, they don't believe in the Jinn, but they believe in fallen angels. They believe that an angel can become corrupt and he becomes a fallen angel. He becomes a devil. That's why they show Lucifer always with wings. They depict him with wings. Lucifer is who they believe is Iblis. By the way, man, if I had my Kit Kat stuff, I'd give another one. Who knows the name of Iblis before he was named Iblis by Allah? Wow. This is, what are you talking about? No, Iblis comes from the Arabic word ablasa, which means what? Somebody who is devout is void, is not going to come near Allah's mercy. So he's Iblis. And that's why it's somebody who lost all hope. Shaytan will never be guided. Period. Everyone needs to understand. There's no like Allah yahdi shaytan. That doesn't work. Allah has said that he is cursed and that's it. This guy is going to Jahannam. Period. Period. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. But what was his name before he was Iblis? Because he was actually a devout Muslim. He was a devout worshipper. But his arrogance got to him. He was such a devout worshipper that Allah Azza wa Jal allowed him to worship amongst the malaika. Like Al-Hasan al-Basri and many other scholars mentioned. That he allowed him, Ibn Abbas, he allowed him to worship amongst the malaika. So when Allah commanded the malaika, Isjudu li Adam, fasajadu illa Iblis. Right? وَكَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ. He was from the jinn. He was never from the malaika. He was allowed to worship amongst the malaika. But he was never from them. But he was never from them. What was his name before? What? Yes. Yes. Jazakallah khair. Azazil. Many of the companions reported that his name before he became cursed was Azazil. Azazil. And this guy, he was of the jinn kind, and some of the scholars mentioned that the jinn outlived the humans way before. Allah created them, some of them said, with earth. They were created at the time of earth. But we don't know evidence for sure, but what we do know is indications that they lived on earth before us. They live long lives, by the way. They live long lives. So, Siddiq Hassan Khan, he's a scholar. He was in his house, and the Rasul ﷺ said, in Medina, a lot of the jinn became Muslim. A lot of the jinn became Muslim. He said, and some of them took the shape of snakes. Some of them took the shape of snakes. So he commanded us. He said, if you see a snake in your house, you command him to leave 3 times and you give him 3 days. If he doesn't leave, you have permission to kill him. You have permission to kill him. Okay? Siddiq Hassan Khan, he said, I entered my house, a snake was there, and I requested it to leave 3 times. 3 times. And I gave it 3 days. He said, and after that, it was still there, I killed it. He said, I was taken. He mentions this, by the way, he wrote this out. He said, I was taken at night. He said, he goes, it was the most amazing thing he's ever experienced. He said, they came and they took him at night. He said, who came and who took him? He said, the jinn came and took him at night. And they said, we are bringing forth, we want our revenge for killing a Muslim jinn. So he said, I have nothing. He said that you can't take revenge over me, because he mentioned the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that we are instructed 3 days and give them that time, and after that we have permission to kill them. This jinn, he said, I never heard of this. He said, we'll call the one oldest amongst us. He said, this jinn, he said it was an older one. He said, I heard, listen to what the jinn said. He said, I heard from Abu Hurairah that the Prophet ﷺ said, in Medina, some of the jinn have become Muslim. If you see a snake in your house, tell it to exit 3 times. After 3 days, you have permission to kill it. He said, let him go. He's fine. He said, that is true. So Siddiq Hassan Khan would make a joke in his isnad. He says, I have the shortest isnad to the Prophet. Yani a chain of narrators. He says, I heard from that jinn who heard from Abu Hurairah. He said, I skipped 1,000 years of scholars and I went that way. He's saying it as a joke. But that is the case, that they can come amongst us. They can, and they live long lives. This guy said, this jinn said, I heard from Abu Hurairah. So they live long lives. The Shaytan, some scholars asked, why did Allah grant Shaytan a long life? Why? Why did He grant him such a long life? Until the Day of Judgment. There's a real hikmah that a lot of the ulama answered. Right? Can you think about it? If this is the sworn enemy, aduwwun lak, this is a sworn enemy to human beings, why did Allah allow him to live all the way until the Day of Judgment? Who could think of that? Close. صح. يعني that's part of it. Anybody else? Because Allah Azza wa Jal is fair, always. We believe that. I want you to play this scenario through. The Day of Judgment's going to happen. And we will stand in front of Allah. And the people will see everybody's sins, all of their shortcomings, their bad things. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us. He hid them from us, from the people here. May Allah Azza wa Jal hide them and forgive us for them in the Day of Judgment. On the Day of Judgment. Imagine, you remember how Habil and Qabil, they had the fight and his brother killed the other one. Remember? The 2 sons of Adam? The Shaytan did waswasa. He started making that jealousy between them. He wanted to marry the girl, right? Iqlimiyya, he wanted to marry her, he didn't get her, etc. Anyway, we don't want to get into that whole story, but I want you to imagine the actual thing that can happen. Imagine we're standing on the Day of Judgment, and Allah didn't allow Iblis to live till the end of time. He allowed him to live after Adam, and that's it. Let's just say. When the son of Adam comes on the Day of Judgment, And Allah says, you committed murder. That was the first act of murder that ever happened, by the way. The first act of murder was then. And so he said, amongst the children of Adam, he's going to say, oh Allah, please forgive me. Look at the rest of these people. They didn't have the same fitna that I had. I had to deal with Iblis, the worst fitna on this planet. This whole generation didn't have to. But because Allah allowed him to live a life the entire distance of the time of earth, then nobody can come with an excuse on the Day of Judgment. Nobody. Because the Shaytan does waswasa. He doesn't force you to do anything. Even in Surah Al-Hashr he says, إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهَ رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ إِنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِّنْكَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهَ رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ. When we come on the Day of Judgment and we see Iblis, he says, oh, that's the guy. He's the one. He's the one who told me that I didn't have to do that. He's the one who told me to enter that deal. He's the one who told me to buy this, to watch that bad thing, to say those things. He's the one who told me to have a girlfriend. He's the one who told me I had a boyfriend. All of this business. And then Iblis looks and says, what? Inni bari'un mink. Like bari means I never even seen you before. You're a stranger. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know anything about you. Inni akhafu Allah Rabbil Alameen. I fear Allah. On this day, Iblis says, I fear Allah. I fear Allah. He's scared on that day. What about us? Everybody has the same fitna. Every single person has the same fitna as well. Okay, let me just start going over this real quick and then we'll end. Just regarding the this whole thing about possession. Because sometimes people wanted to understand this concept. Number one, sometimes a jinn will overpower a girl and try to marry her. This has been reported multiple times. This marriage is haram. This marriage is haram. Some scholars said they didn't find anything impermissible with it, but it's an aberration. Yani it's makruh. Some scholars said that. Like who? Like Imam Malik. But he said it's not allowed. Why he said it's not allowed? He said lest the girls are going to start coming forth pregnant. Huh? He says, where's your husband? He says, I'm married to jinn. Oh, ho, ho. What? What are you going to say there? He got you. Right? No, it's not allowed. Because nobody does it. And like Umar al-Ashqar, rahimahullah, he said that in Surah Al-Rum, in verse 21, when Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned that He created from us our own azwaj, that right, He, help me with the ayah, verse 21 in Surah Al-Rum. It's not hard to remember because most scholars said two becomes one. That's not lovely, it's nice. What is it? No, verse 21. Ayah 21. Okay. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. See? مَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. That He created from you spouses. So they said you're only allowed to marry from human beings. But some people, they're overpowered. How does that happen? The scholars said these people who like nakedness. Nakedness. And this has happened many times. Many times. That you'll find girls who dance in the shower and sing to whatever is going on these days. I don't know who's the artists. They're singing in the shower. They're naked. And then something would happen. They'll slip or something. And then all of a sudden they get possessed. This has happened multiple times. And it's recorded about that. The Rasul ﷺ said, do not flaunt yourselves naked. Don't. They said, Ya Rasulullah, even in the privacy of your own homes, he says, Allah has rights over you. Wow. Even in the privacy of your own homes. By the way, we're not talking about when a husband and wife are having relations. This is just generally, right? Because there's some other religions who are weird about this whole concept. Al-Muhim. So, when we're talking about this entire thing, can this happen? Yes. And you can be protected by the level of iman that you have. The level of iman that you have. Some people, they're sitting there. In Surah Al-Jum'ah, Allah Azza wa Jalla says that the Shaytan inclines you to listen to music. That you like nakedness. That you like adultery. That you like alcohol. You like all of these things. He shows you that they're fun. Right? You see the commercial for Budweiser. They're partying it up. Right? Now they got the guy who doesn't want to drink. They got the zero. They're saying, listen, go to the party, but don't be the loner. Get the Bud Light Zero one and kick back with everybody else. And make it look like fun. Huh? Good times. But it's not. It's a waste of life. It's only going to lead to something worse. And so, when it's some people say, oh yeah, but you know what? I read Ayat al-Kursi. Says, oh, mashallah. Do you know that the result of this Ayat al-Kursi is the result of your iman? It will protect you by the level of your iman. You understand that? And this is what the ulama mentioned, because one of our teachers, he was asked, he said, Sheikh, said, I know a friend, he read Ayat al-Kursi and he still sees like these weird jinn things. And he asked him about what he does. And there you go. It doesn't follow the sunnah, misses his salah, he's not dressed, he's dressed very weird, all this weird stuff. Yani? And you find that's why. Some scholars, they even mention stories about possession. And I'll mention this and then we'll end with that and see if anybody has any questions. Right? About how the shaitan can get to. Some scholars mention that even when they sat in these cases of possession, and by the way, just for a little side note, this happened also at the time of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. 3 times. 3 times. One with a Sahabi, one with a child, and twice with a child. Okay? So, no, 2 times with adults and 1 with a child, male adults. That possession happened. And the Prophet ﷺ brought them forth and he said Bismillah 3 times. He said, I am the Prophet of Allah, and he blew into their mouth 3 times and the jinn exited. But we don't do that. You ain't a prophet. Don't go bring people's mouths and blowing it. You know, what are you doing with my daughter? I'm the imam. Back up. Blowing her mouth. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Cause all sorts of problems. That's not what we do. That's the Prophet ﷺ. You want to rid possession? You just read Quran. There's no cut the toe and knock her with a wood. And there's all sorts of weird things that people were saying that they do. You got to keep banging on the foot because then it's going to come out. It's just weird. You break the leg. So anyhow, this happened, I just want to tell you, authentically, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ 3 times. One reported in At-Tabari. That one has a little bit of weakness. One is reported by Sunan ibn Majah, and the other one by Musnad Imam Ahmad. Okay, so there was a scholar who sat in one of these cases, and he would read Quran, and you keep on saying, "Ikhruj minhan aduwallah." That's all you keep doing. You read Quran, "Ikhruj minhan aduwallah." Exit from here, the enemy of Allah. And then all of a sudden, he writes that this girl, she speaks in a very thick and heavy voice. It says, "Ana laysa bi kharij." I'm not leaving this girl. And he keeps on reciting, "Ukhruj minhan aduwallah, ukhruj minhan aduwallah." That exit from here, O enemy of Allah. He said, listen, I'm in love with her. I'm in love with her. And that's it. I'm staying with her and I'm not leaving. He says, why? He said, she was dancing naked in the bathroom and I used to watch her all the time doing this. She slipped and fell and I seized the moment and I entered her. He said, I'm not leaving. So he kept reading Quran. He said, "Ukhruj minhan aduwallah, ukhruj minhan aduwallah." By the way, on a side note, the Rasul ﷺ said the basmala is a partition between you and the jinn kind. Just say Bismillah. Every time you're going to change your clothes, say Bismillah. Every time you enter the restroom, you say Bismillah, a'udhu billahi min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. I ask Allah, seek refuge from the female jinn and the male jinn, from the male jinn and the female jinn. And you enter with your left foot and you exit with your right foot. Little things like this is part of the sunnah. Protect yourself. This is what Rasul ﷺ did, right? But then, it's funny because some of these sisters, they say that, oh, I went in with my left foot, I did the whole thing, and I'm still seeing these crazy jinns coming on me at night. Well, you went half naked outside. You went half naked, you left the house, you're half naked, and you went in the bathroom, you covered up. When nobody, this is weird, right? No, but I read Ayat al-Kursi. You think that this stuff is just like typing? It's not how it works. So, he says, if you don't leave me alone with this girl that I'm in love with, now this is the scary part. He says, I know where you live. He says the address of his house. He says, I know your wife. He's never met this girl. He says, I know your wife. He mentions the wife's name. He says, I know your children. Mentions the children's name. He says, I will come after each one of you. He says, and by the way, you sleep on the bed on the right side and she sleeps on the left. He says, I'll come for you if you don't leave me with this girl that I'm in love with. He ignored him and kept reciting Quran. And they keep on doing this consistently. The next day, he's still reciting Quran, and then the jinn comes out again in the voice. And he said, I came to you last night. He said, I came to your home. And he looked at him. He said, and? He said, I couldn't come near you. He said, You read Ayatul Kursi last night, didn't you? He said, I read it every night. He said, Allah put an angel outside of your house that I couldn't come anywhere near. Now, the hadith is, the Rasul ﷺ said, before you go to bed, if you go make wudu and you recite Ayatul Kursi, Allah will send an angel specifically for you to guard you and your family throughout the night. To guard you throughout the night. What we have to think about is what kind of angel is Allah sending that the jinn are looking and they're just deathly afraid of. That boom just comes right outside the house, protecting you the entire time until you wake up. Then you get one of those embarrassing questions that I never thought I would get. Somebody said, oh, what if I fart after I did my A and I did everything? I got to go make my wudu again? The answer is no. You don't, just so you know. Because we don't need that OCD starting. You'll never go to sleep. You'll never fall asleep. Okay. And then the last few things I'll just mention is where they like to do. They like to try, they enjoy when you yawn. When you yawn, and the Rasul ﷺ said when you yawn, cover and restrain yourself because the jinn try to enter you when you yawn. And when you make a sound, you know some people they yawn and they make a sound like that whole thing. He said they start laughing. They start laughing, the shayateen. They're just laughing at you. And he said, for the person who ignores Salat al-Fajr, for the one who ignores the Salah and they sleep, purposely ignores it, he said the jinn are urinating in their ears. Urinating in their ears. And also he said that the jinn, they like to live inside or stay in places in the nose. That's why you should do instant shat when you do the nose and you do for wudu. Also, he said in the fingernails. Under the fingernails for people who let their nail grow long. Really, you know, some older guys, don't look at everybody's nails now, but they have the long pinky. And I was like, yeah, that's just disgusting. Why is the pinky long? He says, it's my mikhaf. And he starts digging in his nose. Just nasty, man. Just absolutely nasty. Right? He's straight, oh, God. A mikhaf is like a carving tool, he called it. He's proud. He's got his long carving tool here. Disgusting to every single level, folks. Alhamdulillah, you know. Anyhow, they like to live under there. Don't do that. That's nasty, right? Things like that. And they also like to live in graveyards, and also toilet areas. Toilet areas. Does that mean a jinn is living in your bathroom right now? Well, here's the thing. Some of the scholars said that where they like to hang out is in the area in front of the toilet where you undress to use the bathroom, right? I feel bad for you if your sink is in front of the toilet. That's tough. That's where it's like a catch-22 type deal. You know, by the way, back in the day, everybody just made wudu outside, so you could always just get some water. But God forbid we don't have running water to make wudu. But anyhow, so those are all things that you can avoid that situation. All right, and again, you read Ayatul Kursi and Allah Azza wa Jal will protect you. And He will protect you in the way and the amount of iman that you have. Because a lot of people forget that part. You firmly believe in Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah Azza wa Jal will protect you. And they don't have any control over you. Any control over you. By the way, Al-Hasan al-Basri, he was walking home one day and he saw a shab, a young man. And he had to, in order for him to go home, he had to go through a very dark alleyway. He looked at him. He said, why aren't you walking? He said, I don't know. I'm afraid of like jinn or something. Like this is a freaky alleyway. He started laughing. He said, they're more afraid of you than you're afraid of them. Go. Just go. They're more afraid of you than you're afraid of them. You see? When you realize how pathetic this creation is, that they need you to worship them because, you know, they're sad and they want Iblis's approval and all this garbage. It's a sad creation, sad way of thinking. Pathetic. But as a Muslim, you're venerated from any of that garbage. And you only believe that Allah has power over everything and that they have no control over you. Because I'll tell you the truth. If I was sitting down and that girl was possessed and she blacked out and told me you live on this place and this place, I am out. I'm not going to lie, I'm scared. I would be a little shivering. That guy, mashallah. You know how many people text me, oh, I think my sister got a jinn. No, it's not me. Go call somebody else. But I'll tell you, once you hear and you learn about it more and more, it becomes like nothing. Doesn't mean, you know, we're going to be those people extracting all of that. But you learn and you become smarter and you become wiser. Nonetheless, I ask Allah Azza wa Jal that this Ramadan we're able to benefit from it. We can start habits in this Ramadan while the shayateen are restrained and shackled that will allow us to continue them until the next Ramadan. And may Allah Azza wa Jal reward everyone for coming, and may Allah Azza wa Jal allow us to benefit from which we have been said. Does anybody have any questions? Tafadhal. And then we'll go on the sister's side. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very good question. So the brother asked, for those who couldn't hear, he said, for somebody like the layman person, the average Muslim, who is a person that can determine if this person's actually possessed or not? And the answer to that is anybody can. This is what you do. Tell the jinn to do something that's supernatural. Put, like, for example, a book or a bottle of water and say, knock it over. If they can do that, then they're possessed. Okay? One of my teachers, Sheikh Walid Basyuni, he did that, to be honest with you. He said they didn't do anything, just, making all this noise. And then when the mother left the room, he told the girl, he said, okay, stop joking around. What's going on? I know you're not possessed. I've seen possession. She said, I want my boyfriend and she won't let me have him. Literally just came out of it. Says, I like this boy. She said, no, I can't marry him. So I'm trying to get possessed, so she kicks me out of the house. So she freaked out. Then one of my teachers, and Sheikh Walid said, he said, for example, he put a bottle, and one time the jinn actually knocked it over. He said, I'm not going to lie, even me, I was taken back a little, because I never seen it. It was always my test, but I never seen it. So it can happen. It can happen. Wallahu alam. You know, and yeah, tafadhal. Wait, 1 second, just from the sisters, and we'll come back to it. Anybody from the sister's side? I answered it already, yeah. The marriage can't happen. That's the one that always comes from that side. Next. تفضل. نعم. 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 صح. Yeah. صح. The brother said that this question was asked by Sheikh Qatanani, and he said, can it happen? Yes. He said, but it should still be confirmed with a scholar. It shouldn't just be anybody to say, well, I did the water bottle test, they knocked it over. Okay, that could be a starting point, and then yes, jazakallah khair, you should bring an imam, obviously, to confirm, but not just any imam, like a scholar, obviously, like somebody like Sheikh Qatanani, because some people are leaders of leading salah and stuff like that, but they're not a alim. There's a difference, just so. Nah. Yeah. Yep. صح. صحيح والله صحيح. تفضل. Yes. وياك. صلى الله عليه وسلم. صح. So the brother was saying, what about when you come home, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that if you say Bismillah and enter your house and say Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, that the shayateen won't enter with you. So this is the general shayateen. The ulama answered what this means is this is the general shayateen, but your qareen is always with you. Your qareen of your wife is always with you. Your qareen with your children of discernment are always with you. And if there's a shaitan who's already living in that house, he's still there. This is the general one, because the hadith says that the Rasul ﷺ mentioned that if the person doesn't say Bismillah, the shayateen who don't have a place to sleep that night, they all bunker at this house. So you see? نعم. صح. No, and that's the way we should be. And وهذا كذلك يعني. And that's the way it should be. He's saying where a person has good certainty, yaqeen in the belief that these things can't harm you, these are things that you don't have to worry about, which is what we're trying to also explain. There's so many things that you could prevent. So when you enter your house, if there's nobody home, you say Bismillah. Some scholars said you could still say Salaam alaikum, because if there's malaika there, you're giving salam to them. Ibn Hajar mentioned that. But if it's an empty house, it seems like the majority of scholars said you don't say Salaam alaikum to an empty house. But if you did, there's nothing wrong with it anyway, just on a side note. Anybody else? Yes, in the back. And then I'll see if there's, I don't see any sisters have any questions. Yeah. Oh, you asked something very good because I forgot to mention something. He said, if you get mad at something, you start yelling really loud. Can a jinn possess you? Listen, a jinn will never possess you as long as you have firm belief in Allah, you're doing all of your wajibat, and you're staying away from the mahrumat, okay? Never forget that. These kind of things, Allah Azza wa Jal won't let them harm you, okay? Whether you're angry or not, that's something you're sinning. That doesn't mean that Allah's going to punish you and let a jinn come in you and all that. So you don't ever have to worry about that as long as you, in your age, you're listening to your mother, you're listening to your father, you're doing your things, you're not doing anything haram. One thing that I notice amongst the Arab a lot is they say, Allah yil'an al-Shaytan. Allah yil'an al-Shaytan. The Rasul said, do not il'an al-Shaytan. He said, do not. He said, takabbar. He said, he gets bigger and he gets happy, excited when you do that. He said, ista'idh min al-Shaytan. That is the thing that you should take from this completely. Number one, you say Bismillah all the time, and the isti'adah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitan rajim. You stick to these two things, wallahi, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But again, it's not like clockwork, right? It's you and how close you are to Allah. Allah tells you to do A, B, C, D. Wallahi, I'm going to do my best to do A, B, C, D. Allah tells you stay away from X, Y, Z. I'm going to do Allah my best to stay away from X, Y, Z. And then you continuously do all of these things, right? You don't just sit there and say, I'm living my life, you know, YOLO and mish arif what. I'm in college, you got to try everything once. Bismillah. Before you smoke weed, you say Bismillah too? I mean, this is just weird stuff that's going on. Before you text your girlfriend, you say, Bismillah, see, inshallah, it's a good night. Well, this is silly. That's the Shaytan making fun of us. He makes you think like, you say Bismillah, you're making a mockery out of the religion. That's not how it works. It's about your level of iman and following what Allah Azza wa Jalla instructed you. It's about how you carry yourself out throughout life. Wallahu alam. Okay. Yeah, oh, I see. Sorry. Two over here. Yes, go ahead, sister. So at the time of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, at night, put your lights out. He said, because the shayateen come in the form of creatures and they try to knock it over to set your houses on fire. Today, you know, you keep the light on, it's LED, and I don't know. But what I would do is I would shut them off. I don't know why you, I mean, unless you have some sort of security system, that's something else. But if you want to follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, if you're home, you should shut the lights off. If you're home, you shut the lights off. If you're one of those people who just wants to leave the lights on for some occupancy reason or something, that's something different. For the reason, right? Okay, so if you're doing it for that reason, you're just not home, you want to leave the lights on to make it look like somebody's home, that's something else. But if you're home and you're going to sleep, you should be shutting them off. Not that he's going to turn the LED on fire or anything, but... Naam? No, the night lights doesn't, there's no haram and halal with night lights. You want to put night lights, you could go ahead. There's an entire study by RIP, Rochester Institute Polytechnical University, that they said that the melatonin in the blood is not created when light is on after the break of night. So after like 10, 11 o'clock at night, your body will naturally produce melatonin to make you tired. And the more that you leave lights on, it's actually unhealthy. But that's nothing to do with the religion. That's a scientific answer. Yes, sister. Say that again, I'm sorry. So the shayateen are not going to enter the house through a TV. But what you're doing is you're welcoming this kind of mindset with the children. One of the things that if you look at the theme of all of the Anbiya, and this is why it's important to study all subjects, Qisas al-Anbiya, the one thing they battled against the most is shirk. The thing that they battled the most, the thing they hated, the thing they condemned was shirk, right? And the thing that, it's unfortunate, a lot of these cartoons like Encanto and all this other stuff, they have these gods, right? It's all shirk stuff. And you got to make sure that, that these kids, it's what you want to expose the kids to. But if you're very clear that this is a cartoon, this is nothing, this can't happen, things like that, maybe, that comes as a parenting decision. But that comes back to you. But wallahu alam. Would I show them devil movies and show them that, like I think there's a TV show, I don't know about it, but I know I see the preview sometimes when you open up the television, Lucifer. I don't know if they're portraying him to be a good guy or bad guy. I don't know if anybody knows, right? He's a good guy. Lucifer is the devil, but he's a good guy in the show. Well, I'm serious. I'm not making a joke. I want to understand. I don't know what it is. Is it? That's what it's supposed to be? Oh, look at this. Oh, wow. So Iblis got the idiots to write a show to say he's not bad. He's a good guy. Stop condemning him, guys. There's no such thing. Well, this is how, this is a joke, guys. This is what's going on. All right. So anyhow, any other questions? Going once? Yes, last question for the night. Yeah. What's that, like season 6? I mean, yeah, this is going to happen. Yeah, may Allah Azza wa Jal guide us, Ya Rabbi. I mean, look at this. They even have Luciferian churches now, where if you want to worship the devil himself, you could just sign up and be a member of that. Crazy, man. It's absolute crazy. Yeah, in Arabic it's called al-mas. Yeah, there have been a handful of scholars who said it doesn't exist, it can't happen. But I just mentioned to you, these scholars, wallahu alam, these ahadith didn't reach them. The hadith that's reported by Tabari, the hadith that's reported by Musnad Imam Ahmad, the hadith that's reported by Sunan ibn Majah. Now the one in Tabari is actually has some, it is a little da'if. But the other two, Sunan by Musnad Imam Ahmad and Sunan ibn Majah, those are authentically reported. So it's from the Prophet ﷺ. They could debate all they want, say whatever they want on it, doesn't matter. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لكم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا